modern media has become a hellscape of distrust. It has become depolarized, one-sized entities that feed into narratives to people that society is fractured and split against you, the individual, and that the system is violating your rights to think and the government is attempting to suppress you because of narratives that one side is always better than the other. It looks like when you go onto one news outlet, you're presented with one side of the fact. You're presented with one reality that cannot be reconciled against another. We think that this inability to have fairness and balance in the modern news media is what has created the polarization, misinformation, and distrust in society. We are so proud to stand against that. First, I'll give you some setup. We have 4 points of setup. The first thing is to say is that the Fairness Doctrine would only affect the biggest media organizations that attract a significant amount of viewership. That looks like things like BBC News in the United Kingdom, or the largest cable news outlets such as CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News in the United States. We also know that this explicitly rules out shows that are explicitly opinionated. That is to say, if you are providing only opinions and not reporting news, you would not be affected under the Fairness Doctrine. Second, we would require that all controversial issues are covered and that they are covered with balance. That looks like if there is a debate, having equal amounts of panelists from both sides. It looks like experts presenting viewpoints from both angles of a particular subject. And it looks like things like Fox News being barred from presenting Tucker Carlson as a news anchor, when in reality he is an opinion artist and has always been described as one in legalese. Third, that controversial issues look like things that are large scale, in the public interest, and have significant discourse already, or the potential to become incredibly polarized, such as particularly involving certain groups, such as minorities or women in abortion or affirmative action. And then finally, that we have had independent media regulators or ombudsmen in New Zealand to regulate the practices and ensure enforcement of this Fairness Doctrine. First then, on how this promotes civil discourse. Contextually, what is the media landscape of the developed world in many parts of the world now? 3 things. The first thing to say is that it is becoming increasingly polarized. That looks like the fact that the Overton window is shifting and there is increasing division between different ideologies and different news organizations that show different ideologies. That looks like the fact that CNN has moved increasingly left over the past 4 years and that Fox News has moved increasingly right. We think this has been driven by the fact that the other has moved. That means that if you as an organization are facing competition from your opponents which are going further in the opposite direction, you are incentivized to move in your own direction to consolidate your audience. The second is that it's become increasingly sensationalized and selective in what it sensationalizes. That looks like media organizations that choose specific instances of controversial issues to peddle their own narratives. It might look like things like CNN picking one specific instance of affirmative action being good for certain groups to justify its remaining, or it may look like Fox News picking specific instances of women against, say, abortion rights to justify that all women do not want that. And finally, is increasing pressure to adopt similar models because of these factors. That is again the competitive pressure, that when you have an increasing amount of competition, you're increasingly incentivized to become polarized. We think that the media have become held hostage to the ideology monster that they themselves created. Because even whilst executives at CNN and Fox News lamented the fact that they had to cover stupid Donald Trump's policies and his evil narrative, they continue to have to do so because they knew that their opponents would. They knew that that was the only way they were going to stay in business and make profit. We know that therefore there's an increasingly outsized role that the media has on society and its perceptions of people on the world. That in presenting itself as an objective form of viewing the world, it inherently has a level of responsibility we think is not reaching. How then does the Fairness Doctrine help to improve the civil discourse? 3 things. The first is we think it cleans up media. We think it provides an explicit differentiation at the first level between opinion and news, at the point you stop letting organizations get away with disguising ideology and vitriol as news. Second, you force a balanced perspective on already contentious issues. And we think it's important to note because things that opinions and division in society will always exist. The question therefore is how does the media respond to it? We think the media should respond by attempting to consolidate these opposing viewpoints and present one that is fair to everyone and therefore everyone can participate in, as opposed to pick a side and therefore exclude members of the opposite belief. And finally, we think it frees media organizations to do that, because at the point the government imposes it on every media organization, it no longer becomes the choice of a singular one. It means that all media organizations have their Overton windows shifted further towards the center, that they're all required to present more balance as opposed to specific ones doing so and therefore experiencing a disadvantage when it comes to the sensationalized media of today. Fundamentally, we restructure what media can do and therefore what they do. What does that mean for society? Two things. The first is that there is less explicit distrust, because support for organizations like BBC News, which are viewed as independent, is high, and in a way that support for US cable news such as CNN and Fox have plummeted to record lows in recent years. We think the reason for that is because the BBC purports to be independent, that they purport to present balanced facts on both sides that allow all individuals to participate to a much greater extent. The second, though, is that issues have more awareness. It means that you have less ability to sensationalize specific instances or choose instances that fit your narrative, because you're now obligated to present on all issues, reducing the echo chambers that we think media has helped to fuel. We don't know here that division exists and that opinions exist, and understanding both of these is now the responsibility for media to reconcile that and to reduce things such as extremism that we increasingly see in society. I'll take that point.
You say that news will be equitable. How do you stop people from being confused and disillusioned by all these contradictions?
We don't stop. Okay. News will be equitable, and therefore there is a difference of opinions. If people are confused by issues, that is a problem of the debaters being bad, or the experts being bad at getting their views across. What we are simply arguing for is that these organizations must provide the platform for this to occur. The fact is, the majority of people will be much better able to comprehend an issue holistically if there are holistic opinions being presented. That is the fundamental basis of what we're arguing for. But second then, on how this explicitly discourages extremism of modern society. I think it's very important to contextually note here why people turn to fringe and extremist beliefs, such as ones in the depths of social media and other ideations like that. We think that the majority of people who become this extreme initially do so because they are become inherently distrustful of media, do so because they have a gradual movement in what they perceive to be the central ideas, the gradual movement in the Overton window. We think that, noting again that contentious ideas always exist, narratives such as the fact that you think one media outlet is only going to cover the opposing viewpoint because they're inherently against you is the type of narrative that forces you to go to things like searching for echo chambers to confirm your own beliefs. Because if you are someone who believes in something that the mainstream media in your area does not believe in, and you consistently have zero exposure to positive representations of such, you're far more likely to feel as though media and popular media is unable to represent you. That means that you are more likely to do things like search for alternative news online. But also, even in a world where you do have multiple outlets presenting different news, we think that the same incentives that I told you about earlier that incentivize you to become further right or further left means that these organizations inherently find less and less middle ground. It means that you are forced to pick a side because if you watch Fox News and you watch CNN, the things that you learn are inherently extremely different and made extremely different by the inability to be fair to one another. How then do we decrease extremism? Firstly, your ideas and thoughts are inherently portrayed because of the fact that they have to do so in order to be considered as a media organization that is allowed to present news. That means that you have exposure to the issues that you actually care about, and there's actual debate on the topics that you think are important. It means that there's actual engagement with your ideas as opposed to the simple suppression and oppression of your thoughts that is commonly touted. But secondly, we think it discourages extremism because of the fact that all organizations become more central and therefore become more likely to contain elements of your ideas. We don't think opinions should not be allowed. We simply think that there should be a balance to them so that more individuals can feel as though it represents their opinion and that opinion can be more representative of society we are so proud to propose.